Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So, George, one of the main things, as you and I were speaking earlier, that I think is important for all of you to have is my direct contact information. Feel free to, and I think Rhonda will probably share this information, or I can email it to everyone. This is my direct business cell phone number on the screen, as well as my email address. Most of us at the Bureau of Workers' Compensation are still working remotely from home. And so I found myself actually working more hours from home than I did when I was actually in the office. So we usually have our laptops right in front of us all day. So you can reach me either by business cell, or I will get the notification when your email pops up. So feel free to use me. You don't need to call the 800 number. I've been in workers' comp for about 30 years. So generally, I can answer any workers' compensation question you may have, or I know the person who you need to talk to. Before we get into talking about programs and grants, I like to give a little bit of background information, because we oftentimes as an agency assume that people even know who we are and what we do before we start getting into details of our programs and grants. So we are one of 4 monopolistic states, which is very important to understand. And monopolistic basically means you have workers' compensation coverage with our agency, or you do not have workers' compensation coverage. So you'll see commercials for Aflac, for Progressive, and it will seem as though, okay, I could get workers' compensation coverage through one of those other entities. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us as an agency, in order to have workers' compensation coverage, you must have a policy with us. And the other 3 states, North Dakota, Washington, Wyoming, are the same as well. We oftentimes get questions from people saying, well, why are we only 4 that are not that are still monopolistic? Why haven't we become privatized like the other states? With some of the programs that I'm going to talk to you guys about, we're second cheapest, and in some cases we are the cheapest. So the discussions about becoming privatized really go away, knowing that employers in Ohio are paying the cheapest rates in the country when it comes to workers' compensation. So keep in mind, if you say these 2 words, it must come through our agency: hurt and work. So if you're working and you get hurt, your private health insurance by law will deny that claim. Progressive, Aflac, any other types of insurances will deny the claim. I get quite a few individuals who don't cover themselves, and they're not mandated to cover themselves if they don't have employees. However, if they are hurt while they're working, the same remains true, meaning your husband or your wife's private health insurance will not be able to cover that claim, because it is considered a work-related matter. Anyone who's been to the urgent care or ER notices that on that injury report, after asking for your demographic information, typically the very next thing they ask you is, did it happen at work? And the reason for that is they know by law that is where they must submit the claim for payment or adjudication. So it must come through our agency. And as I do my presentations, I always love for people to, you can put it in the chat. Rhonda can tell me there's a question and we can go from there. So I like to answer questions as we go along. So feel free, stick them in the chat, and then Rhonda will let me know that there is a question and we'll address it at that time. So what is workers' compensation? It's just like most insurances. You pay workers' compensation premiums as an employer, and in turn, any claim or injury that occurs, we are responsible, our agency is responsible for paying out any of the missed wages. So if you have an injured worker who is hurt and they have to be off for 2 months, we would pay for some of their missed wages. It's very similar to unemployment. You don't get all of your wages back, but it's a decent amount of your wages back. So we pay for that, in addition to any medical expenses that would include doctor visits, prescriptions, surgeries, physical therapy. So your premiums cover that. Very similar to automobile insurance. As long as you pay your premiums, if your car is wrecked, then they in turn pay for the cost of repairing your car. One of the things about our system that is a little different is there is no true tail. And when I say tail, there isn't any specific amount of time in which it says, okay, this claim was allowed for a sprain and we will pay for treatment for 6 weeks on a sprain, and then we will no longer pay for treatment. Our system is physician driven. And so we don't necessarily listen to what the injured worker says they want or need as far as treatment, nor do we necessarily listen to what the employer says. It is more physician driven. So if a doctor says this person needs XYZ treatment, in my opinion, or they need to be off work for X amount of days or weeks, that is generally what guides the acceptance of the claim and the approval of treatments. There are exceptions. Obviously, you can't appeal, but it would also have to be, the appeal would have to be based on medical evidence as well. So who must be covered? Who's required to have workers' compensation coverage? If you have one or more employees, you are mandated to have workers' compensation coverage. And I know a lot of times in dealing with small businesses, minority businesses, there is this back and forth about whether someone is an independent contractor or if they are truly an employee. And I know that differs. Federal guidelines are a lot different than state guidelines, which are a lot different than our agency guidelines. Unfortunately, the law is still very gray when it comes to workers' compensation about defining what an employee is. And so whenever I'm having discussions with employers, I tell them if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck for workers' compensation purposes. Meaning that if you tell the person when to come to work, you tell them when to go home, you provide the materials, the equipment and training for workers' compensation purposes, that is more than likely an employee and must be covered under workers' compensation. One of the things that often throws employers off in trying to determine whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor is they'll say, well, they have flexible hours. Having flexible hours does not necessarily mean that you are an independent contractor. There are days, me as an employee of the state of Ohio, that I may have a presentation that's at 7 o'clock in the evening. So that may be a 10, 12-hour day, but the following day, I may not log on until noon. So I have the flexibility in my schedule, but I am still an employee of the state of Ohio. So flexibility does not necessarily equal independent contractor. Independent contractors can deny work altogether. So a true independent contractor, you as the employer would pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this job for you to do. And that independent contractor could say, thanks, but no thanks. And that would be the end of the conversation. It wouldn't be that they have to do the job, but they could figure out a way how to do the job, what days they're going to work on the job. If they have to say yes, but just find ways of saying yes, then that's more than likely an employee. If they can flat out deny doing a specific job, that is generally an independent contractor. Any questions? Because I do get quite a few people who get confused about what an employee is versus an independent contractor.
Hey, Melly, yes, I do have a question.
Yes.
So if you are the owner of the company and you consider yourself as an employee of the company, are you still required, since it says one or more employees?
Great question. And I'm going to get to that slide. It's the very next slide, and we will touch on that for sure. And hopefully,
Gotcha.
No problem. I will answer your question on that next slide. Okay, so who may want to consider getting coverage? And this is exactly what you were asking. If it is just you and you do not have any employees, you are not mandated to have workers' compensation coverage. However, the same still remains true of what we discussed earlier. If you get hurt while you're working, if you did not have workers' compensation coverage, no one is going to pay for that accident or injury by law. And so now you are stuck as an individual with the cost of missed wages, medical expenses. That bill does become your bill. So for people who sit behind a laptop like I do every day If I was an independent contractor, or if it was just me as a business owner and I didn't have employees, I probably wouldn't need workers' compensation coverage. The likeliness of me being injured would be little to none. But if I am someone who is out in the field and doing work in which I could be injured, I'd probably want to consider at least look into how much the premiums would be to cover myself. Oftentimes you will get, if you're bidding on jobs, they will require for you to have workers' compensation coverage. And the reason for that is they are trying to dot all of their I's and cross all of their T's when it comes to liability. So if they know you have your own workers' compensation policy, they know any injury that would occur would go against your workers' compensation policy. There could be an argument if you don't have your own workers' comp policy and you get injured. Most people don't know what we just talked about, that private health insurance can't pay for it, Progressive can't pay for it, Aflac can't pay for it. Most people don't know that. And so they get injured. Every other place is denying them. They typically get in contact with an attorney. And the attorney says, you sound like you might be an employee. Let's at least attempt to file it with the Bureau of Workers' Compensation to see if they feel like you're an employee. And it could happen in some cases that that individual is deemed to be an employee. And at that point, that is your workers' compensation claim. So that is what the general contractors, people who you may be bidding on when it comes to jobs, what they're trying to avoid is any possibility that that claim could become their claim. And the best way for them to ensure that doesn't happen is for you to have your own workers' compensation coverage. But it is not a mandate by our agency that you have the policy. It's just one of their requirements in the bidding of their contracts, and they're entitled to require that of you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So it says sole proprietor or partner. I'm assuming this falls under all the structure. For whether it's a corporation, LLC, LLP, whatever it is, entity it is, right?
And there are some entities in which you do have to. So if you're basically, if you're like a corporation, I think, and I can do further research for you, but I think they would consider that individual to be an officer. And so officers do need to be covered, but I'll double check on that for you. There are certain structures and entities that do have to cover themselves just because of how they're structured. It implies that they have employees.
Melody, can you check, what if you're a single member LLC?
If you're a single member LLC, you do not, you fall into that category in which if you don't have employees, you don't have to cover yourself.
But could you, as a single member LLC, get insurance?
Yes. So anyone, I could go out and I could today say, you know what, I think I'm going to start making fall wreaths and I need to cover myself. I could apply for coverage today and say under my social security number even. So yes, anyone who wants to cover themselves, regardless of their legal structure, can do that. I was just trying to make sure there's an understanding of who is mandated to have it and who isn't. So if you're an LLC, it is just you. Yes, you could get coverage for yourself if you wanted coverage, but you're not mandated to have the coverage. Does that answer your question, Rhonda?
Yes.
Did you have a follow-up? It sounds like you have a follow-up.
No, I don't have a follow-up. That was, you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. And did I answer the question fully? Because I do want to make sure there are some legal structures and entities that are required, but I don't want to misspeak. So you can reach out to me and then I will, I'll send you the link of everyone who is specifically required and we can have further discussions and conversations at that point. And I'll be in all day. I'll be in all day today so we can get that taken care of for you quickly.
Yeah, I had a question, Melanie. So for business insurance, well, for general liability insurance that most private insurance agencies offer, that I know when they have the part of the listing is, you have personal injury and I guess accidental occurrence and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So those don't cover those don't cover work-related injuries, correct?
Correct. They do not. They are not permitted. Um, if you go through any, and I think almost all of us anymore, they just send you a link to where the policy is once you buy any type of insurance. If you go through it, I always tell people to do Control F, which is fine, and you type the word work. It will go through to tell you, this is covered, this is covered. And then at the end of it, we'll have an asterisk that includes Ohio and the three other states that are monopolistic. So those general liability policies cover quite a bit, but it does not cover an injury that happens while the person is working.
So do we have like, has a customer of these private insurance, do we have the say to choose what coverage, especially with the general liability being having these extra, coverages that are probably not going to be covered anyway? Do we have the um, option to choose what we want on those coverages?
You mean with that particular carrier, can you have those conversations with them?
Yeah, right.
That I hate to misspeak because I feel like I know everything about workers' comp, but I'd hate to even try to guess as to whether you could do that. And I'm sure Rhonda can connect you with someone who is more of an expert in other types of business insurance. But I don't want to misspeak and say I would think that you could, but it's not in my wheelhouse to give an expert answer. So sorry, I couldn't help you more on that.
It's all good. Thank you.
Okay, so let's now talk about some of the programs that we have. The Grow Ohio program is something that is for anyone who doesn't currently have a workers' compensation policy with our agency. And it is to incentivize businesses to either move to Ohio or stay in Ohio. And what we try to do is make workers' comp as easy and as simple for new users as possible. Through the Grow Ohio program, there are two different options, and it's a 2-year discount that you are eligible for. The first option is the 53% discount through a group rating program, and I'm going to talk on the next slide about what group rating is. There is a fee that is required because you do have to enroll with a third-party administrator who will require a fee, and also I'll get into more details about that, but that would give you a 53% discount for your first 2 years of operating in Ohio. In essence, we know that you are pooled with them. They supply us with the list of the employers who are in that pool, and then we bill you accordingly at that discounted rate. The most important thing to understand is after you apply for your workers' compensation policy, it takes us about 30 days. We will give you a temporary policy as soon as you pay your application fee, but it takes us about 30 days for our unit to go through to make sure that this isn't an old policy trying to start a new policy and that everything is lined up. Sometimes we have follow-up questions from the application itself. And so from that date, you have 30 days to apply for this program. So what I recommend, and people do it to me now all the time because I ask this in my presentations, let me know when you have applied for workers' compensation. And then I put a reminder in my calendar to bug you so that you don't miss that opportunity. The good news is if you don't select the 53% discount option, you will get the 25% discount, which is automatically applied. However, you can only keep that if you complete the safety survey, which is what most people do instead of doing the 2 hours of safety training. The safety survey, I forget how many questions are on it, but it takes less than 10 minutes to complete. It asks just some questions about your work environment, some of the things you've implemented. They're multiple choice questions, and it's just for you to then have a baseline of where you think you're at as far as safety. So this is something for any new policy, anyone who doesn't currently have a policy to definitely look into so that you can start off at a really high discounted rate. A group rating was one of the options under Grow Ohio. This pulls similar employers together. So if you're in construction, you'd be in a pool with construction workers. If you're in manufacturing, you'd be in a pool with manufacturing companies. And what this allows you to do is get a higher rate than you could achieve on your own. It's just like with any type of group insurance. If it's just me going out there trying to shop for health insurance, the rate is going to be much higher than obviously the state of Ohio has pulled all of their employees together, and we can achieve a much lower premium for health insurance by sheer volume. Group rating is the same premise as well. The third-party administrators will contact you and say, hey, are you interested in this program? This is the discount you qualify for. You would have to pay them a fee in order to be in the program. And one of the things they do, they not only put you in the program, but they become your third-party administrator on file and on record with the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. They become your workers' compensation advocate for that fee. And in turn, they will attend any hearings. They'll file any appeals on your behalf for you. So an injured worker gets hurt, they hire an attorney to represent them for workers' compensation purposes. Obviously, an employer does not want to have to hire an attorney every time there is a claim that comes through. The third-party administrator is now your authorized representative. And so any assistance that you need, you can obviously utilize their services. BWC, we are considered a neutral party. So our job is not to side with the employer or the injured worker. Your third-party administrator's job is to fight for you and you only. So whatever, if you want a claim denied and you want to file an appeal to a claim that may have gotten approved, they would be the entity that would then do that for you if you did enroll into one of their group rating programs. And obviously, one of the reasons why they do that is the only way to keep the discounts as high as they are is to keep claims costs as low as they can be. One of the other programs that we have that can save you money, so the group rating is probably our most utilized program because of the large discount up to 53%. Drug-free safety program is another program we offer. This can be stacked on top of group rating. It really is for those employers who have a drug policy in which they don't want to hire employees, or that
It looks like no one else is going to join this call.
I'm sorry about that. I have no idea.
Goodbye.
It is for those employers who have a need to identify employees before they actually come onto your workplace as to whether they have any type of substance issue. And then also, if they are in your employment and they're injured, it's a way to test to find out if they were under the influence and that was the reason why they were injured. So in this program, in order to get the discounts, you'd have to have a policy, do some employee education and some supervisor training. And there is a grant that goes along with that in which we could assist in providing funds to pay for some of the education and training. These are the two levels of the drug-free safety program. There is a basic level, 4% on top of that group rating discount if you were to enroll in that program. It just asks for pre-employment testing and post-accident testing. So you don't have to test everyone who works for you. It's just before they get hired, you'd have to agree to test them. And then if they do have an accident, whenever they seek their treatment, they would have to be tested as well. The advanced is sometimes pretty difficult because what it does require is random testing, which a lot of employers are afraid of for fear that someone will say, well, it seems as though I get chosen a lot for the random drug testing and there's some discrimination involved. And then in the advanced level, you are not allowed to terminate after the first positive test. You must provide resources for that individual. So that sometimes stops some employers from moving forward with that program. Now, this is for employers who are on the opposite end of the spectrum. I talk to a lot of small businesses in a lot of rural communities as well who say, Melanie, I think drug-free is great, and I would love to test. But if I tested everyone, I wouldn't have any employees. They're currently struggling with trying to find employees who don't test positive. And typically it's marijuana now that it's becoming more acceptable. They're saying, I get a lot of people who keep testing positive for marijuana and I need employees. So this program is great because it provides the grant to reimburse for putting together a policy that talks about hiring individuals who say, hey, yes, I do have a substance abuse issue. I'm in treatment. And so this is on the other side of the coin. Those individuals say, look, I want to hire these people, but I don't have the resources to know what to do if they come into work and they seem like they're under the influence. That is what the grant provides to the employers is we know you're not the experts, but we'll help you through the funds in the grant to maneuver and best bring the employees back to work or provide a place for employment for those individuals without any type of fear of ramifications for you as an employer. You don't want someone to be injured and now this is your claim. So this program provides some protection. And we know that people who are gainfully employed are going to be better for our community as a whole. It goes into their mental status. It is a boulder that becomes bigger and bigger when people don't have employment. So it's a positive for our community. It does provide the employer some protection so that they don't have to worry about the liabilities that may be out there for hiring such an individual. And then it also provides recovery assistance. So instead of turning the person away and saying, okay, you tested positive, I have to terminate you, it's what can we do? What resources can we provide to you? And having other individuals reach out to that person as well to try and help them through their recovery process, because as we all know, recovery is a lifelong journey. Policy activity rebate. This is a relatively new program and it is employer controlled. You basically have to commit to doing a few things. You monitor yourself, you go online and check off which of these activities you completed. And once you complete the policy activities, then you can receive up to a $2,000 rebate from us. We don't check to see that you've done those. We do reserve the right to do an audit. But right now we're just on the honor system that an employer would go through and do those activities themselves. I know this is very fine print. I even had to put my readers on, but some of it is as simple as attending a monthly webinar. We do webinars all throughout the week, throughout the days. Honestly, this would be one that would be considered a monthly webinar that talks about workers' compensation. So today you already have a check for that activity, but this is just one page. I believe there are 4 or 5 pages of other activities, and some of them are very simple. It can take less than 5 minutes to complete, but it's an easy way for you to get up to $2,000 of a rebate off of your workers' compensation premiums. And the enrollment deadline is February 28th. So this is perfect timing for you to start doing some research. Is this something that I think I want to participate in? And then make sure you enroll, which you do that online. There is no application. You just select that you want to participate and away you go with your activities.
Quick question. How do we sign up for that? Or are you going to provide a link
For the policy activity rebate? Yeah, that's online, and I can send you. What I'll do is I'll get from Rhonda emails of everyone who participated, and then I'll send you links. I'll send you this PowerPoint presentation, and then I will send you links of all the programs that we talked about.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Better You Better Ohio. This is an employee-focused program. It's probably our only employee-focused program. It is just like all the other wellness programs that you hear about. You do a biometric screening, which is a basic finger prick tells you what your sugar levels are, your cholesterol levels, and we pay for that for the employees. The employees do receive incentives from us in the way of Visa gift cards. The employer does not need to do anything. What I generally tell the employer to do is make sure the employees are aware of it. They get online, they sign themselves up, and away they go. They can choose after getting the results of their biometric screening to enroll into a different level in which they would have some consultation with a nurse practitioner who may say, okay, it looks like you're a little overweight. Do you want to talk about some things that could help you? Do you want me to send you links of some workout regimens, just things of that nature? But it's all employee focused, no paperwork for the employer, nothing you need to do. And we have a third party that administers our wellness program. So we don't even get their information. We have no stats on what the numbers are, and you as the employer will not be provided that information either. That is sometimes one of the concerns of employees is, will my employer receive this information? And the answer is no. So it's a great benefit for them just to receive some funds from us and also be aware of their health. We know a lot of people don't even go to the doctor once a year for their annual checkup. So this at least gives them a baseline of whether there's something they need to be paying attention to as far as their health is concerned. And to be eligible, it's for small businesses, so 150 or fewer employees, and you can't currently have a health and wellness program. So it's for those employers who are saying, I wish I could have a wellness program, but it's just too expensive for me to administer. That is what we're taking away from the employer and doing it. Safety grant programs. Now, our safety intervention grants are amazing. And one of the things that goes the quickest when it comes to funds, for every dollar that an employer puts in, we match it and give $3. The safety intervention grants are basically, think of it this way. Most small businesses do things in a manual type of way. So they do a lot of things by hand. There's a lot of bending and lifting, but they're aware of this particular piece of equipment that would do the same thing, but they just can't afford to buy that equipment. That is what the safety intervention grants are for. You provide to us a business reason specifically surrounding safety and why this would make your workplace safer by purchasing this equipment. And if approved, then you would receive up to $40,000 from us to buy that equipment. We do have some things that are on our moratorium list, rubber mats for entryways, because everyone asked for those initially and got those. But don't think of it as just large machinery. There are some very basic things that you can think of as an employer that may help you to be a more safe workplace that we can provide those grant funds to you to purchase. And I also tell employers, obviously this is going to make your workplace safer, but think about how it could yield in an increase in productivity as well. So instead of having someone spend 4 hours a day doing something by hand, bending, lifting, if you have this piece of equipment, maybe it can do it in an hour, which allows you to make more money, more revenue, hire more people. So I think of the safety intervention grant as twofold. It makes you safer, but I think it does yield in higher revenue for the business. And as I said, some items are on the moratorium list, and then our safety specialists will walk you through the process. When you have questions, as questions arrive during the process of applying, they answer those. They have their certifications in safety, so they're well aware of anything that you could be talking about safety related. It goes over my head, but those individuals will be right on the same page with you. So make sure you are utilizing their services and their expertise when looking at a safety intervention grant. And so we have other programs, but I felt like for this audience, these would be the programs that would be most applicable to you. Any questions of anything I've covered, anything even outside of what I've covered when it comes to workers' compensation. I would make sure that this time we spend has been beneficial for you and that you're getting all of your questions answered.
Hi, Melanie. Thanks for the presentation. Definitely very insightful.
Great.
Question is with the safety grant. Is this particularly in light of the equipments that help do our everyday jobs that essentially we will still have to be, be cautious of when operating, or are we looking at safety equipments in preventing stuff from happening?
Yeah, so it can't be something that you currently have. So it would have to be equipment that you are looking to purchase, but it can be any type of equipment that you could make a case to say, by using this equipment, it's safer than what we're currently doing. So what we're currently doing is this person is bending and lifting, or this person is standing for X amount of hours. They could, with this new piece of equipment, they could sit and do it. If you can just show that it lessens the likeliness of an injury, then those are definitely applications that I would say are approved. And so I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
No, you are. I guess my question is particularly is there safety equipment that is designed for safety, or is this
Gotcha.
is an equipment that we would need that helps in making the job more safer?
No, that makes what you're asking is, does it have to be marketed as this is a safety
Correct.
equipment? No, it does not. You just have to show that this piece of equipment is safer than what I'm currently doing or what I'm currently using. So you could be using some outdated equipment and there's something new on the market that you can say, look, this outdated stuff, the newer stuff now adds this extra level of protection. Or it doesn't have to be identified as safety equipment. You just have to make your case that this is safer.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Great clarification too.
And then with the process, I guess with the steps to getting that grant, is that something we work with you on, or is it something that we can read on about?
So what I'm going to do is send you all the links. And then what I would like is when you're ready to start having the conversation, then I would get you on the phone with your safety specialist who would be assigned to you, and then do a soft pass off to that person so that they are familiar with you, know what you're interested in. And then at that point, that person would become your point person. But I generally like everyone to start with me, and then I bring in who your safety specialist is going to be moving forward in the process.
Gotcha.
Makes sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Perfect.
Okay.
Well, George, if you don't have any other questions, I'd like to thank you for participating. Melanie, you provided a wealth of information. I'm sure George is most appreciative, and he will definitely be getting with you. I will follow up and provide you with all the participants' contact information.
Great.
We'll take it from there.
Sounds good, Rhonda. And thanks for allowing me to participate in this session. I try to get the word out as much as possible, and you're always a great partner to work with. And I wish everybody the best of luck in their endeavors.
Thank you. You
Hey,
have
just one question.
Yes.
Sorry about that, Rhonda.
Okay.
So with the I believe the safety, I want to say the safety school because you have to go get credit for it.
Yes.
Is there are those timelined or deadlines for participating in those, or could we do it on our own pace pretty much?
Pretty much on your own pace. You have to have it done within the policy year, but yes, you can do it yeah, at your own pace, which is why I like the program. There is no real rush. You say, okay, I have a year to get this done. Let me just make sure I spread them out throughout the year. But yeah, at your own pace, yes.
Right. Yeah, that's very useful. Yeah, I'll definitely love that info as well once you send that email.
Great.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the knowledge. Very cool stuff to know. I have no idea all this stuff exists, so I appreciate that.
That's the first time anybody's ever referred to workers' comp as cool, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That'll be all for me.
Well, thank you for attending, and I'm going to log off, and I wish everyone a great day.
Awesome. You too, guy. Thank you.
Bye-bye.